The rain fell over the parade ground like a quiet apology from the heavens, soaking through the fabric of the uniforms lined in perfect rows. Flags whipped against the wind, their colors muted under the gray sky. It was graduation day at Fort Ironcliff, one of the toughest military academies in the country. Among the sea of khaki and steel discipline, one figure stood out. Not because of her rank or height, but because of the small silver pin glinting faintly on her chest. A pin that didn't belong to anyone her age. A pin that carried the weight of blood, loss, and legacy. Second Lieutenant Emma Reeves didn't shift or lower her gaze as the senior officers approached. She stood tall despite the mud gripping her boots, despite the whispers rippling through the line. They all saw it, the combat valor pin resting just above her heart. It was rare, sacred, and reserved for those who had faced the unthinkable. To the cadets, she was the rookie who'd barely earned her bars. To them, the pin was an insult. But no one knew what that small piece of silver truly meant, what it had cost her to wear it. The major's boots splashed in the puddles as he stopped in front of her. He was a tall, battle-hardened man, the kind who could silence a room without raising his voice. His eyes locked onto the pin, then onto Emma's face. For a long, cold moment, the air between them was heavy enough to stop hearts. "You can't wear that pin," he said quietly, his voice cutting through the storm. The cadets fell silent. Only the rain dared to move. But Emma didn't flinch. She had been through storms far darker than this one. 3 years earlier, before the uniform and the salute, Emma had been an enlisted medic in a remote forward base in Helmand. Back then, she wasn't anyone's officer. She was the one who ran into fire instead of away from it. The one who tied tourniquets in the dark, whispering to men she knew wouldn't make it home. On one of those nights, her unit was ambushed. A convoy had been hit, the communications tower destroyed, and the enemy was closing in. With the commander down, Emma, just 22 and terrified, had taken charge. She patched up the wounded, rigged a broken transmitter, and coordinated an air evacuation through static and chaos. When reinforcements finally arrived, half her squad was still breathing because of her. The pin she wore now wasn't something she asked for. It was placed in her trembling hand by the commander before he took his last breath. He'd told her, "You earned this. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." But the military is a place where rules often speak louder than memories. After returning home, Emma applied for officer training, determined to continue serving. Her record was spotless except for one thing. The valor pin she refused to take off. Some saw it as pride. Others saw it as defiance. To Emma, it was a promise, a reminder of the night she stopped being afraid. So now, standing before the major, soaked and silent, she waited for the rebuke she knew was coming. He looked at her for what felt like forever, then reached out. The world held its breath as his hand brushed the pin. His expression shifted, not to anger, but to something far deeper. Recognition. Pain. Respect. He looked closer at the engraving along the edge. An old unit code burned into the metal. His eyes widened. That unit had been lost years ago. He had served with them once. And suddenly, it wasn't just a pin anymore. It was memory made flesh. The major stepped back, his face tightening as he realized the truth. He remembered the reports. The medic who had led an entire rescue under fire, whose bravery had gone unrecognized because her commanding officer hadn't survived to testify. He remembered the name Emma Reeves in the after-action file marked pending recognition. His voice softened as he said, "You're the only one who can wear that pin." The wind carried the words across the silent field. Every cadet who had doubted her felt the weight of it settle over them. From that day, Emma became more than the rookie. She became a symbol, a quiet, steady force of resilience. She trained harder than anyone, led with compassion, and never spoke of her past again. But every morning she pinned that same piece of silver over her heart, not for pride, but for remembrance, for every soldier who hadn't made it home, for the major who had looked beyond the rules and seen her truth, and for the promise she made in the dirt and fire, to live a life worthy of those she'd saved. Years later, when Emma herself stood on the review stand as a captain, watching a new generation march across that same parade ground, she saw a young cadet in the line, a nervous face, uncertain but determined. And on her chest, gleaming under the sunlight, was a small medical insignia. Emma smiled softly, her hand brushing the pin she still wore. The story would live on, not in medals or promotions, but in the quiet bravery of those who refuse to let fear define them. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Legends of History. Every story we tell is a tribute to the courage, honor, and sacrifice that defines true heroes. Special request to comment. Tell us below, what does courage mean to you? Is it fearlessness or the strength to keep going, even when fear never leaves?